For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jillian Hawkins. I am the Assistant Executive Director of the Illinois Democratic County Chairs Association. Thank you all for joining us tonight for this virtual training on running board. Before we get started, just a couple ground rules. First, be respectful of all participants. We've got a lot of different levels of experience and expertise here tonight, so there will be a lot of questions being asked. Second, be present. Our training won't last very long, so if you need water or anything, go get it now, but try to be present for the entire training. And third, ask questions. Ask any questions you've got. We've got everybody muted on the call just to make it easier, but if you've got questions, please put it in the chat box below and I will read questions out as they come in. So we'll go ahead and get started here. We are joined tonight by Jackie Traynere. She is a Will County Board Member. She represents District 4, which is the Bolingbrook region, and she's served in that office since 2008. She's also a member of the IDCCA Leadership Circle, which is an advisory board for the IDCCA. And we're very thankful that she's here tonight to tell us a little bit about herself, her experience running for county board, and pass on some advice that she's learned over the years to all of you. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Jackie.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here tonight. I first got involved in politics in 1995. Not sure I would have known the difference between a Democrat and a Republican at that point in my life. I acquired a position at a labor union, and one of the first meetings I had with my new boss, he encouraged me to reach out to the local Democratic Party and get involved. Well, I certainly did. I got very involved. My first assignment was basically being a name on the ballot to fill out a slate for Lake County. I was running as clerk of the circuit court. I didn't even know what the circuit court was or the clerk thereof, but I filled out a spot on the Democratic Party ballot. So sometimes that's just one of the things you do. It wasn't until 2006 that I decided to try my hand at running again, and I ran for county board here in the same area, slightly different district. And when I did that, and so I lost by 89 votes, or basically 45 voters, and I vowed I would run again, and I ran again in 2008, and I ended up being the top vote getter. There were 6 candidates on the ballot, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans. I got the most votes, and I was one of the 3 people that were elected to serve that term. I served alongside 2 Republicans, and I've enjoyed my time on the county board. It's been an interesting process, just learning how government works and being involved in trying to champion democratic ideals. So that part has been really, really good. Jillian, if you enable that host or that participant screen sharing again, I can put up, there we go. There we go. So that's one of the first things actually that I wanted to talk about, is, are you a name on the ballot, or is your race actually winnable? And you need to figure that out. You need to know what your win number is. And the way you do that is by knowing what voters in your area have done in the past. So you want to go to like elections years where county board members from your district were on the ballot, and take a look at those numbers. But I've included a link here, and you guys will get a copy of this. This link is from the NGP VAN, or the Vote Builder system, and has an ebook that you can download to understand how to calculate your win number. And then there's even a worksheet there so that you can plug in the numbers from your area to determine if it's possible to win. When I first ran in 2006, it had been a while since a Democrat had tried to run in this area. But the area was more leaning Republican. We had included a portion of Naperville, southern Naperville, and it really did lean Republican. But I think what made the difference for me was a lot of door knocking. That's why I got so close in that particular race. So I also want to encourage you to focus on the community in your district, getting to know those issues, attend events in your own district. There are always political events going on in your county, all over the place. If you are going to run for office, it's extremely important that you focus in on the area events that are local to where you're going to be running, and pick those events first before you wander off to something else. So for an example, in my area, the county seat is Joliet, and there are a ton of things going on in Joliet all the time. Entertaining events, political events, just a lot of community things, because that is the county seat. When I first got on the county board, I felt like it was my duty to get to know what was going on at the county seat. I learned very quickly what I need to do is go to every event that's in Bolingbrook. So you want to go to the events in your own community, in your district. As I mentioned earlier, door knocking is #1, and you want to make sure that you tell the voters when you're introducing yourself that you want the position, that you want their vote. It's extremely important. It makes a big difference to them. I think that was a large part of why I got so close the first time. And we hadn't had a Democrat represent this area in probably 40 years. It had been that long. So you want to tell them you want the position. One other thing, they're probably not going to know what the county board is. They may even start to talk to you about the school board and want to know if you can fix things with the school board. So you will need to be a little prepared to talk to them about what the county board does in your area. It is different in every county. So I would encourage you to research the issues so that you can talk knowledgeably about what's going on. Even if it's not something the county votes on, if it's happening in your county, you should know about it. The big issue in my area when I ran, I don't know how many of you have been up or down Interstate 55, but there is an exit just south of Route 53 called Weber Road. And as it turns out, it was one of the most dangerous intersections in the entire state. And it had huge backups for people trying to get onto Interstate 55 to go to work or just entertainment. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what time of day or night, what day of the week. It was always very, very busy. And so when I ran, I talked about how our current county board and the past county boards had not really planned for the future growth of this community, and they did not expand that interchange in a proper fashion, and they actually kind of created a stranglehold. We did not have a four-leaf clover intersection, and so people had to make left turns in front of oncoming traffic, and that's why it was so dangerous. So I talked about that a lot, and I made it my mission, my talking point to tell people that I would be there on the county board to plan for the future, to push for things for the 21st and even the 22nd century so that we weren't living in the past. Whatever your issue is, whatever your cause, you know, make sure that you show up for anything dealing with it, help where you can, participate in protests or boycotts, you know, really get involved. Don't just kind of use people, but actually support them, help them. Don't exploit their cause. Get involved. Like I said, most don't know there is such a thing as a county board. So they're, you know, likely going to need to hear from you about what your county board does. One thing I've learned in the time on the Will County Board is that we don't do as many things as other counties across the country. Some counties provide all the garbage service. Some counties provide all of the water service. Some counties provide all of the sewer service. Some counties are involved in the schools, you know, as a school board kind of situation. So every county is different across the United States, but even within Illinois, the things that go on in Cook County or the collar counties like Lake, Will, DuPage, Kankakee, Kendall, Kane are far different than what you're going to see in downstate Illinois or in Putnam County or Bureau County. It's just incredibly different. So you want to make sure that you've attended some county board meetings and that you can talk knowledgeably about what they're up to, what they're involved in. My other experience when I first ran for the board, I did go to several monthly county board meetings, and I figured out that the real discussion takes place at the committee level. So if you really want to know what's going on, you need to know what the committee schedule is and show up for the committees that have something interesting on the agenda or something that should be of interest to voters. That's where the real meat and potatoes is. That's where you generally hear the discussion about the individual issues. There will be times that at a full county board meeting, you know, you're going to get, I would say, a more detailed presentation of the issues and maybe some back and forth, but a lot of it takes place right at the committee level. So that's important to know. If there are no issues in your county, nothing that in your district that you're particularly excited about, then the race really needs to be about you. Your integrity, your honesty, your decency, why you decided to do this. Maybe the reason you decided was so voters could have a choice, so that there would be somebody on the ballot for them to vote for. So that can also be, you know, a really important, good reason for somebody to vote for you. Next is about money. And I steal a little line here from the Emily's List group. Early money is like yeast. It makes the dough rise. If you can possibly win, you need to determine how much it's going to cost. What do you need to do and what are the costs associated with that? Maybe it's a mailing, maybe it's a flyer that you hand out door to door, maybe it's robocalls, phone banking, but whatever it is that you're going to do to make out your campaign, it's going to cost something unless you are just a name on the ballot. The threshold for spending is $5,000. So if you raise $5,000 or donate $5,000 to your own campaign, you then need to make sure that that is in writing, and you have to file with the state of Illinois with the Election Commission, and you file what's called a D1 or a statement of candidacy, and then every quarter you have to file with them again, letting them know what monies you raised, what monies you spent. So you need to determine, you know, what it's going to cost to run this race. Signs cost a lot. Investigate into whether or not you really need them. They run, I'm going to say on average about $3 a piece. I would encourage you not to put them on street corners, but to put them in yards. That way people know that there are people in your community that are supporting you. Same thing with businesses, but make sure that the owner of that business lives in your county. That's really, really important. So in order to raise money, you need a place for people to send it. You don't want to count it as personal income. So, you know, having a campaign account is really important. You start with the Internal Revenue Service, and you go online and you apply for what's called an EIN number. That's probably the first step you want to do in the fundraising process after you name the name of your campaign. You want to go out and get that EIN number and print off that number and save it to your computer and stuff a few extra copies in a file folder somewhere, because it's pretty difficult to get a copy of that form once you're off that web page. So you want to make sure that you get that. The reason you need the EIN number is to open a bank account so that people can write you a check and you can put it in that account. If you plan to use Facebook, you absolutely must have an EIN number, and you absolutely have to go through a pretty intense process to be able to do political advertising. It doesn't cost any money to go through the process, and Facebook advertising is pretty inexpensive. You can target voters just in your area, so you can really target that advertising if people are big Facebook users. And one thing I've noticed since COVID-19, people use Facebook a lot, especially in communities where there's no newspaper. So I would really encourage you, if you're thinking about doing any advertising on Facebook, get that EIN number, get that bank account set up, go through the process to get approved for political ads for Facebook, and just plan that takes a little bit of time. They actually have to mail you something to your home so that they can prove that you're who you say you are. You have to send them copies of your driver's license. It's pretty intense getting that whole process set up. So as I mentioned, once you get an EIN number, then you need to set up a campaign bank account. If you do believe you're going to spend over $5,000, this is when you need to register with the State Board of Elections. If you're not sure, you can kind of wait until you get close to that $5,000 threshold. But if you're getting into the campaign a little bit late, let's say you're getting in right now and the party is putting your name on the ballot, well, you don't really want to wait until October to have this problem. And then when you should be knocking on doors or making phone calls, you're going to be dealing with the State Board of Elections. So far better to do it in advance. You do have to file quarterly. You can do it with paper or you can do it online. They have a system online that it's a little clunky, but it's not horrible to use. And I will say the people at the State Board are fantastic helpers. The littlest question that you have, if you call them either the Chicago or the Springfield number, they are fantastic at helping you through the process. Very, very good. Once you start a campaign account like that, you do have to file quarterly. You do not want to get into a situation where you're late on your filing because they will assess a fine to you. And the last thing you want to do is have to pay a $1,000 fine because you forgot to file something that literally could have been filed with a couple of clicks of a computer button. So it's very, very important. And even if you don't have any activity, and this is where they got me on the first time, after the campaign was over, 3 months later, it was time to file again, but I hadn't spent any money. I hadn't raised any money, hadn't done anything. Who would have thought you need to file, right? I didn't file. I got a letter in the mail. They said, you didn't file. And I talked to them on the phone, and they're really pretty gracious the first time. If it's not anything terribly glaring, the first time they give you a pass. But after that first time, if you do anything wrong, you're going to get a fine. And the last thing you want to do is raise money and then have to turn around and give it to the State Board of Elections. So that's important. Website. This is kind of controversial. You really want to do a website that's little or no cost. It is not a good investment of your money because likely you're not going to get a lot of visitors there because people would have to know you or have your information already in order to know that you had a website for the most part. They can Google you, maybe you'll come up on a search, maybe not. But it is important, to have some sort of free landing page that just gives some information about you. And then you can put a link on there to your social media or to a resume, and of course a Facebook page because that's free. That doesn't cost you anything. So you can even get free websites. There's plenty of companies out there. The one I'm thinking of offhand is called Winnable, but there are a bunch of them. If you Google free websites, you will find them. You definitely want to have a social media plan or a calendar. If you're already on social media, you may want to go through your back posts, take a look at things you've posted in the past, make sure there's nothing on there that would embarrass you. And then have a plan where, you know, maybe you're doing 2 posts a week about why you're running for office or what's important in your county, what you stand for in the county. Very, very good way to reach out to people, your friends especially, so that they know you're running and know what you're doing. But as I mentioned before, there's an authorization process if you're going to do some political ads. I do real estate part-time, and I do ads on Facebook for real estate as well. And even that is a little bit complicated. There's information they ask you for as a business owner. So don't wait until you want to make the post or want to boost a post, which is advertising, or you want to advertise something specific like a fundraiser. You want to get that out of the way right away. Make a social media plan. Get a calendar and say, hey, I'm going to post every Monday at 3 o'clock, every Friday at 4 o'clock, every Saturday at 7 a.m., whatever you decide to do, and get a calendar, be religious about it, make sure that you do your postings. It's really, really helpful. People want to know what you think. They might not post a single word on any of your posts. They may not comment at all, but they're reading them, and you can tell how many people are reading them. People are hesitant to post on social media because they're afraid they're going to be attacked. So just think about your messaging when you are putting a post on social media. Is it saying something about you or your campaign? Are you conveying a message on an issue that you care about that has something to do with your race as a county board member? If you keep that in mind, really think about that. You should pretty much be safe on what you're posting. And again, a lot of people won't comment because they don't want to be attacked. I mean, even commenting on a post sometimes can get people, the trolls, as you will, out there attacking you. And there will be trolls. Your opponent will have some people that will follow your social media, that will say unkind things. Don't feed the trolls. Really, don't feed the trolls. If somebody writes something on there about you, ignore it. It will be very hard, but ignore it. You take my advice. I've learned the hard way. Just let it go. It's good if you have support in your campaign. Maybe you've got a party person, somebody at your township or your county, or maybe a precinct committeeman in your neighborhood that would be willing to push you when you're feeling kind of, oh, you know, do I really want to go out and knock doors for 2 hours today? You know, if you have an accountability partner, somebody to kind of give you just a little nudge that's going to call you up and ask you, you know, what you got accomplished. That's very, very important. When it comes to friends and family, it's interesting. They don't help automatically. If you want their help, I would first encourage you to ask them. Don't assume that they're just going to come forward because they should somehow know that you need help. I have a number of, I guess what you'd call shirt tail relatives that live fairly close by, within 30 miles. And none of them showed up for my fundraisers. They were invited, but they didn't come. They weren't really into politics, you know, didn't really see a role, I'm sure, for themselves. But on election night, every single one of them was on the county website looking at the vote totals. And they thought for sure I was going to win this last race that I ran in. I ran for mayor here in my local community. I ended up losing again by 0.5 percentage point, 151 votes. And several of them said to me afterwards, gee, Jackie, if I'd have thought it was going to be that close, I would have come and helped. So be sure and ask them. Don't just assume that by giving them an invitation that, you know, they're going to come forward. You may have to actually say, hey, can you come out and knock doors with me? Or, hey, can you come phone bank for me? Or, hey, do you know anybody that lives in my area that you could call or raise some money from for my race? So even if they're not into politics, they could still be interested in helping you, but don't just assume either way that they will or that they won't. You need to just ask them. They may already know of your interest in politics. Maybe they're not in the same party. That would be difficult to get their help for that, but you never know. If they like who you are and support you, even if they're from a different party, it's possible that they could assist in your race. My colleagues on the county board said it would be great if you had a person to help organize volunteers. I think it's great if you have volunteers. That's probably one of the hardest things to find, is people that will go out and pound the pavement with you or help you with this race. County board can, depending on the area you live in, can again be a position that they just don't know anything about. Most people know what the mayor is and who the mayor is, but they get a little lost when you're talking about county and township races, unless you live in a farm community, and then I would say they probably are very familiar. But it would be great if you had a volunteer. They can help organize the work, help you decide what the work should be. The next topic is a union printer. We are Democrats. We support labor. One way to show our support of labor is to use union affiliated printers at every opportunity. I understand you might not do your thank you cards on union printed literature because you're doing them by hand and you're doing them at your kitchen table. But if you're doing a mailing, if you're buying yard signs, even if you're printing an invitation to a large fundraiser and you're printing 100 invitations, talk to your local printer. If you've got a union printer in town, they can usually print those out cheaper than what you can do on your own home printer and computer. They can do it less expensive and it'll have the union bug on there. Make sure that you tell them you want the union bug. Very important. Keep the sign simple. If you're planning to run again or think you might have to run twice in order to win your campaign, I would urge you not to put a date on there. The district number, well, that kind of depends. We're in the middle of the census right now. In 2022, all of the state legislature district boundary lines will be redrawn, and that's state house and state senate. And almost assuredly, the county board district lines will change as well. In my community, they built a very large apartment complex on the east side of town since I got this district in 2010, which was after I won it in 2008. In 2010, they remapped everything, and I'm literally 1 block away from the western border of my district. And now that they've added this whole new subdivision on the eastern side, it's possible I won't be in County Board District 4 next time around if I run for County Board. I might be in County Board District 3. So you don't necessarily want to put a number on it, especially this year. If you think you might have to run again or might want to run again for either re-election or just run again because you didn't win the first time. If you put that district number on there in 2022, it could be a different district number. Large print, use a pro. A lot of the printing houses have somebody in-house that can help you with graphics. If they don't, reach out to other Democrats on your county board or other Democrats in your county and ask for help. There are people out there that will, put together stuff for you for $25, $15. It's not a huge cost, but they'll put the graphics together for you. You want to make sure that you bring those signs to the events, the parades, the festivals, if we have any this year. You know, same thing with your literature. That's an opportunity to distribute your stuff and meet people. I have learned that quality is better than quantity. So if you are spending time at the doors, you know, don't worry about hitting every single door and just throwing your literature on the door. You do much better off to hit as many doors as you can where you could actually have the time to knock and talk to the person that lives there. So field, this is the door knocking part. So it is good to ask questions of the voters when you're at the door. And when they tell you about something or they tell you they believe in something, you know, repeat it back to them. It sounds good because then they know you heard them. And also it gives you a real understanding of what they're thinking. If it's something that maybe you don't agree on, you might want to ask them why they believe that. Don't argue with them. Don't tell them they're wrong. Just ask them why they believe that. And if they tell you, well, you know, I saw it on Fox News, you might want to suggest, you know, you might want to Google that. You may find that there's some additional information or opinions or facts out there that you would want to review, and kind of leave it at that. I wouldn't never argue with anybody at the door. I remember, I think it was 2008. I was campaigning for county board. I was talking to a really nice lady at the door, and up walks her husband. And he saw that I had an Obama button on my shirt, and he literally pushed his wife out of the way and said, we don't support baby killers. And he slammed the door in my face. Don't get too crazy about stuff like that. You are going to run into people. This is kind of like being a salesperson. For every 100 doors you knock on, you know, you're going to get a few people that are just not fun. And don't let that, you know, become personal to you. Just listen to what they have to say and move on. And if, you know, it's very counterproductive to try to get into an argument with somebody. Again, ask them why they believe what they believe. Suggest that they maybe want to do, you know, there might be some other information out there. And at the end of the day, just say thank you and move on. You know, if they're not interested or there's a clear difference in how things are going, and they don't believe in the same issues that you believe in. One thing for sure, you're going to need multiple hits and in multiple ways. So the door knocking is number one, but obviously if you have the budget and you can do social media and do some mailings, do it. If you can only do one mailing, don't bother. Really seriously, unless it's something small, because it'll get lost and people won't even see it. You'd be better off using that money on Facebook or to do robocalls on Vote Builder. You definitely want to use Vote Builder to keep track of your supporters. You also want to try to collect emails. I am the queen of emails. I am known as the queen of emails on the northern edge of Will County. If you open your door and I chat with you, the chances are about 90% good. You're going to give me your email by the time we finish our conversation. And I'm going to update your phone number in our Vote Builder system. As I mentioned before, don't argue with people at the door. Just say thanks, have a nice day. Asking leading questions that pertain to the issues you're running on. I said, what do you think of the traffic on Weber and Interstate 55? Boy, people would just let loose as soon as I said that to them. You know, and asking them if they're planning to vote, nudging people about voting. Are you planning to vote? Do you know that you're going to, if you voted in the last 3 elections, you're going to get a vote by mail application in the mail very soon. And in light of COVID, you know, you might want to consider voting by mail and filling out that application. Always visit the houses with your opponent's yard sign in them. It's an opportunity to talk to somebody who does vote. They may not vote for you, but you definitely want to talk to them and just make sure that they're solidly supporting the other side. The one resource you cannot get more of is time. Money, you can kind of get some more money, but it's, you know, depending on what part of the race, you might not be able to. If it's October, it's crunch time. It's going to be hard to get more money. So just be really careful with both of those resources. You will get lots of unsolicited, well-intentioned advice. You need to listen, but in the end, it is your campaign. You're going to make the final decisions. You're going to live with the results of that campaign. I can't tell you how much I cried on election night in 2008 to an older female that was there. I was so sad that I had lost by 89 votes. It was 2 votes per precinct, 2 votes. That was it. So, you know, sometimes you have to learn the lesson by losing, you know, and you need to make changes in your campaign. So a couple resources that I used for some of this advice today, a book called The Campaign Manager by Catherine Shaw, and another book that had a section in there written by a dear friend of mine was Winning Elections in the 21st Century by Dick Simpson and Betty O'Shaughnessy. And I wanted to share the page where, let me find it, I think this is it, where you get the ebook and the worksheet. It's not seeming to work. Let's see, we'll try it again. Maybe if I just click on it. Try one more time. There we go. Yeah, maybe it just froze up before. Okay, there we go. Share, there it is. All right, this is the one, running for local office. Now this is on the vote builder system on the van. These are free documents that they have there. This video is going to be uploaded to the Illinois Democratic County Chair site. There's lots of places to go for information. Don't get too bogged down in training. Sometimes you need to just get out there and try, and not just count on, you know, watching lots of webinars. But this, you can download your campaign strategy basics to get your win number just by clicking here. It's free, and it'll give you all the information for how to get to your actual number, your win number for your campaign. So very important. And then last but not least, 2 other books that I've read that I found were really helpful that I didn't put on the flyer. 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. There we go. I got this at a national organization, the National Association of County Organizations called NACO. NACO has a website, and I believe there's stuff on there that you can also look at. But this was really a fascinating book written by a gentleman from Canada. And then another book from an organization called Public Leadership Institute. Their book is called Voicing Our Values. Both really good books. And the Voicing Our Values may help you with messaging and how to put your message together. So I'm all set for questions, Jillian.
All right, well, we've gotten a few questions in, and a reminder, if you have any questions, please put it into the group chat feature, and we'll try and get through as many questions as we can before our time is up today. But I guess the first question, and a question that we've been seeing a lot, is the way we are campaigning is changing a lot due to COVID-19. And do you have any advice? Obviously, door knocks are important, but that's kind of all up in the air right now. Do you have any advice on other strategies people can use to reach out to voters, whether it's social media or phone calls, and how they can kind of maybe not replace door knocking, but do something instead?
Yeah, actually the IDCCA has a, I believe it's you guys, not the Democratic Party of Illinois, but there's definitely a phone banking activity going on. Is it called Rev, I believe?
Yes, Project Rev, that's through
Project Rev. Or you can just use your own Vote Builder access to put together a list of people that you can do phone banking too. You can also buy robocall time, but I don't know that I would really recommend that at this point. If you're just thinking about running and just getting into the campaign, I would pick, strong Democrats to reach out to and talk to in your district and introduce yourself. Also, by doing that, you're kind of cleaning up the vote builder list, letting you know which voters have good phone numbers and which ones don't. But I definitely would encourage phone. If you have the bandwidth and the ability, you could make a video. You could do some Instagram posting. I am going to be announcing a new campaign for myself sometime before July 11th. I'm meeting with some people in the next 2 weeks, and we're going to put together a 2-minute video. And we're going to be placing that all over the internet as my announcement for my new race. So there are ways to reach out. And as I mentioned, Facebook advertising is pretty inexpensive.
Right. We also had some questions. You mentioned earlier that if you only had money to do one mailer, that not to bother, but do you have a recommended number of mailers to be effective, or any advice on how to make sure that a mailing to voters is effective?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend 3 at a minimum. I'm not even sure I do 2, but again, it depends on your district, what kind of voters you're reaching out to, what the numbers are in your district. So there are some other things that you've got to factor into that, but I think 3 would be a good number.
Great. And then going back to, everything changing with COVID-19, do you have any advice on how to raise money during this time, which I know is kind of a constant struggle, but do you have any advice to give on that?
Yeah, well, I do want to go back one more second about reaching voters under COVID-19. Another tip that I've been given, put your walk list together on minivan and go walk your street and knock on the door, or call the person when you're in front of their house and explain to them, hey, I'm going to run for county board. I'm outside. I'm practicing social distancing. I'm trying to respect people. If you'd like to come to the door to talk to me, great. I'll keep, back 6, 8, 12 feet. There's nothing to stop you from knocking on a door right now. I mean, Illinois is now officially kind of in phase 4, I think, as of today or first thing tomorrow. Restaurants are open. My husband and I went out to eat last Friday. We ate in an open air section of the restaurant, but people are slowly moving back to normal. Well, we're people too. Politicians, candidates, we're people too. As for the fundraising, I was with a group of people last night and I talked to them about fundraising, and I said, most of your money is likely, depending on where you're at in the campaign process, if you've run before or you're running for re-election, most of your money is going to be raised from friends and family and colleagues and coworkers. These are people you already know. You can just call them up and say, hey, I'm going to run for this office and I could really use your support. And there is a whole other training on fundraising, but you can do it by phone. Last night when I was working with this group of candidates on fundraising, teaching them how to fundraise, I made 3 calls. I called a person that I knew well, I called a relative, and I called a woman who I had met door knocking in the past, but I really didn't know, other than I had her name and her phone number. I talked to all 3 of them, and I got money from all 3 of them. So, if it's people and again, there are lots of trainings out there to help you figure out what to say on the phone. But don't let that stop you. And then last night while I was training people, there was a fundraiser in my county for 2 county board candidates, and it was a virtual fundraiser. There's lots of virtual events just like what we're doing right here tonight.
Right. We've got a question on how would you go about setting up kind of a kitchen cabinet for your campaign? Is there qualities and skills you should look for, and how should you reach out to those people that you would like to bring into your campaign?
Yeah, it's difficult because people are so busy. I think you want to reach out to people who have experience, who've won a campaign. You want to reach out to maybe somebody who's lost a campaign. If you have people in your circle that have the ability to help you with graphic arts things, websites, you know, putting together mailers, those kinds of things, you know, that might be somebody you want to bring into your cabinet. But I would say people who have won, people who have lost. Those are probably the most important, and people who have raised money before, even for a not-for-profit, not affiliated with politics. You could get a lot of good advice from those three areas. And then if you have a couple of people that you really want and they've agreed to help you with the campaign, maybe somebody's going to be in charge of hosting coffees, you know, setting up a coffee schedule, something like that. Somebody that's already said, I'm going to take a role in your campaign, I'm going to help with something. You would want to have them included in your kitchen cabinet too.
Hey, we've got just a little bit of time left. If you have any last minute questions, please put them in the another question is, do you have any advice to give to first-time candidate or maybe someone who's just considering running, particularly if they are maybe not experienced, maybe they haven't run for office before and they're going up against someone who's very experienced or has been in office for a long time?
Well, I won't say I didn't have any experience, but in 2017, I ran against a 31-year incumbent. I was outspent 4-1, at least. So don't always let their tenure in office make the difference. That guy should have wiped the floor with me. He spent 4 times more money than me, and he's been the mayor in this town for 31 years. I shouldn't have even gotten close to him. He was sweating bullets on election night. He won, but only by 151 votes. So don't let that stop you. Reach out to other candidates in your area that are in your party. Go knock doors with them. Help them. Well, it's too late now to help them get on the ballot. But if you're thinking about this for 2022, it's not too late. And in 2022, actually it starts in 2021, it would be in September of next year, those Democrats in your area that are planning to run for office are going to need to get on the ballot. They're going to need signatures on their petitions. That's a great way to get your feet wet, is by working on another campaign, and work at every level of the campaign. Volunteer to do the door knocking, volunteer to do the signature gathering, volunteer at one of their fundraisers. Maybe you'll work the front door and collect the funds that get contributed at that fundraiser. The best way for you to learn is to actually have hands-on experience. My Congressman, Bill Foster, when he decided that he was going to run for Congress a few years back, it was 2010, he went and worked in 2008 and 2009 on other candidates' races. He was, I think, in Pennsylvania or New Jersey or somewhere like that. And I mean, literally did every job on that congressional campaign so that he knew what to expect on a campaign and knew what it would take.
All right, we had a question that was about volunteers and how do you invite volunteers into your campaign, or how do you recruit volunteers?
Yeah, boy, it's hard. It is really, really hard. And then the people that you think are going to help you sometimes don't. There are plenty of trainings out there on how to retain and get and maintain volunteers. A website I would really truly recommend you take a look at. They have a whole section on how to be a candidate as well, but they do have one like on the care and feeding of volunteers, and that's the National Democratic Training, NDTC, National Democratic Training Committee.org or .com. I'm not sure which. I just go to them automatically. They have a lot of trainings on there that are recorded online that you can watch. But, you know, think about people you go to church with, people you work with, people. If you're involved in the Democratic Party, there are precinct committeemen, township people, county people already. Maybe your county board is Republican and there's Democrats there that would like to increase the number of Democrats. That's how I got recruited. A fellow Democrat said to me, "Hey, Jackie, I'm thinking about running for the county board. We need a slate of 3 candidates. Would you be one of the people on the slate?" you know, and they've asked me a couple of times, but I did finally agree. So, you know, you just have to reach out to people and ask, and start with small tasks. Don't give them anything big, because you might scare them off.
Great. We have time for just a couple more questions. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat. We also would like to know if you could go back in time, if there was one thing that you know now about running for office that you could tell yourself back then, what would it be?
Oh, man. Getting people to vote by mail. Seriously, getting them to vote by mail. Especially with this last campaign that I was on, because I know there were people that came up to me after the election and said things like, I didn't think you could win. I didn't vote. I am so sorry. Getting people to vote by mail, you know, getting them to commit to a voting plan. There's a lot of conversation about this on various Democratic training websites. I read a book called Nudge. I don't know how many of you get your electric bill from Commonwealth Edison, but I do. And they send me almost every month or every other month, although lately with COVID, they've slowed down. But they would send me like this piece of paper that gave showed all my neighbors using less electricity than I do. And the idea is to nudge you to be a better consumer and not be such an electric hog. They want to guilt you, if you will, into, you know, not using as much electricity, which is kind of odd because this is ComEd and they are, well, that's a conversation for another day. But the book is called Nudge. If you like to read, I think you'll find that fascinating. It talks a little bit about opting in and opting out. An example, vote by mail. You know, getting these vote by mail ballots sent to us, the application, without having to opt in for it, is going to increase voter turnout, especially on the Democrat side, which is why the Republicans don't want vote by mail applications being just sent out blanketly. So that's an opportunity, you know, an example of Nudge. And there's other ones, but that's the one that I came up with right away.
All right, well, we want to thank you, Jackie, for your time tonight and for joining us at this training. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here tonight. If you have any further questions or anything that we didn't get to, I'm going to put my email here down in the chat, and just send us an email and we'll follow up with you. This training was recorded, so it will be available on YouTube. If there's something that you missed and want to go back to, you'll receive a link, should be up by tomorrow. If all works out well with the technology. And other
Can I do a commercial? If y'all want to know what a virtual fundraiser looks like, July 7th, the Illinois Democratic County Chair Association is hosting a fundraiser online. It's a trivia game. I think it's at 7 o'clock, right, Jillian?
Yes.
7 o'clock. You know, pony up a couple bucks, attend a virtual fundraiser. This one is going to be trivia. I have done several with my real estate office, like on Friday night, they'll do happy hour when we first started the whole lockdown. And, you know, so there's different things you can do.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here tonight.